Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Action Movie Anatomy. It's me, it's not Ben, but we are talking Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm an idiot. I didn't stay for the second post-credit scene, so we're going to talk about it right now. Spoilers coming your way. Boom.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Action Movie Anatomy.
Whoa, where's the song? Where's the song? No, just kidding. Thank God.
That was dark for a moment. I was worried just in general.
I was like, I think a blip has
They
happened.
finally found us. YouTube finally. Snoop Dogg is outside the studio. It finally happened.
95 plus 4 pennies. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Action Movie Anatomy. Welcome back, my good friend Coy. How you doing, brother?
Dude, so excited for this movie in particular.
Oh, dude,
This is the perfect. This is fate.
There's only one man that I should really call to have come on this show.
Every Spider-Man movie,
Yes.
animated or live action, I will be on Action Movie Anatomy. We'll make it happen.
He could talk the whole time. I could just sit here. He'd make me look smart.
Do a 3-hour show. Let's just Titanic runtime. Avatar, we're coming for you.
After last night's stream, I cannot do a 3-hour stream. Coy is here. We've also got the Cine Fanatics here on the couch. Robert and Chris, how you boys doing?
Doing good, doing great.
Yeah. Why are you here? How did you find this room?
I blame you.
What are you guys doing in LA? Are you guys just on vacation or?
We're actually here for, as YouTubers, not only do we run like the Cine Fanatics movie channel, but we also are doing our own vlogging channels as well.
Okay.
So we're just interested into the whole YouTube culture, the community. So therefore we are also attending for our second year in a row VidCon down in Anaheim.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, maybe you can help me out with YouTube. Because
I know it's so little.
So bad.
I feel like I went backwards. I started at networks that go to YouTube, but I never did a YouTube channel of my own.
Right.
So when now I look at YouTube, I'm like, this seems like a lot of buttons.
A
Seems
lot of
complex.
buttons. There's like many layers, intricacies about YouTube, but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the ramifications of the blip. Guys, this is going to be a very serious episode, and it will be 3 hours long. We're here to talk Far From Home. I actually really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. But first and foremost, let's get a few things of business out of the way. Where can the people find you, Coy? I mean, pretty easy.
You can find me at Coy Jandreau on Twitter and Instagram, on Collider and Nerdist and Screen Junkies and here. And I gotta promote at the jump. Jake Gyllenhaal and I went comic book shopping, so while we're talking about Far From Home, there are going to be some Jake Gyllenhaal tidbits, because I got to go shopping with Mysterio for comics. It was pretty crazy. Saw the movie in London. We'll dive into that, but please check out comic book shopping. I'm so proud of that episode. Jake Gyllenhaal and I talking comics is amongst, not even bucket list, just how did this happen list?
That show, it was one of those holy shit moments for me. I opened up my Twitter or Instagram, and I was like, holy shit. Is that Coy?
We started promoting it, and people were like, "Oh, you guys are overhyping it." They're like, "It's special guest in London."
Yeah.
We kept doing this stuff, and everybody's like, "It's gonna be blankety blank," and everybody was like dejected. I was like, "No matter what, it's someone from Far From Home. What's wrong with you?
How bad could it
Look
really
at this
be?"
cast?" And then when people were like, "Oh my God, it's Jake Gyllenhaal," and then it was just this long quiet of "Oh no, it wasn't overhype," and then I just was like, "Meh."
And you're like, bleh.
And then the episode, Jake was he's a great actor because he listens.
Right.
So I had a really good time just imparting knowledge to him, and then me and him talk about acting process. And he's the first guest I've had on the show, usually in between setups, because in any sort of creative making, there are lights and there are camera equipment. You have to move stuff. It takes time to set up. So in between setups, I usually look at my notes on my phone, what questions did I want to ask versus what comic, because I try to coincide the comic with the question. If you watch the show, it's supposed to be seamless.
Yeah.
Jake wanted to talk between every setup about why I love comics, why he's into acting. We never stopped talking for the entire shoot, and it was this amazing moment of me and this guy are talking as far back as Donnie Darko about process. We're talking about Jeff Bowman, who I went to middle school with, the guy who lost his legs in the marathon bombing, and Jake played him. So I got to talk about the real ramifications with the man who knew more than anyone. And it was just this. I was one of the most amazing life experiences I had, and then I got to share it with the world.
And he's just the coolest dude.
Jake's the best, absolutely exhaustingly cool, because he's that handsome, that talented, and that cool. It's not fair. The bar is too high.
Right. So who made you?
What are the rest of us supposed to do with this person existing?
Talk to him about comic books.
He's fantastic, and he's the first guest. We were in London, so usually guests we do all the behind the scenes stuff, and then we're like, okay, we'll get these books back to you. But we're in London, and Jake was like, no, I want these comics. I want to read. I want to start. So it was really great for him to be like, no, I want this now. How do we?
Them all.
We dove in. So
And I bet he could afford it.
I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal's doing okay. But yeah, he was so invested in the comics, and it's been really interesting to see people on YouTube being like, Jake looks bored. I'm like, no man, he like can't wait to read Saga and Mr. Miracle and all the stuff we talked about, and that's also cool to see someone of that repute be like invested in the actual source material.
Well, no wonder he's so damn good at everything that he does, because he's just that type of person. He doesn't do anything half-assed.
He wants to absorb. He wants to like glean knowledge from. And I don't use the English language like most people with like noun, adjective, verb. And he like was repeating some of my phrases, and I was like, this is fascinating. Am I going to be a Jake Gyllenhaal role because of my weirdness? Like it was just weird to see like his process. So he's fantastic. It was an absolute honor. And to tie it into my favorite superhero, like Spider-Man's been I learned to read on Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man Torment, I shouldn't have been reading at age 3, but I learned to read through the comics of Spider-Man. So it's an honor to be able to do all of this stuff, and it's been a whirlwind of press.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to you a little bit more about that, about London, about Jake, everything. So dude, I'm so glad you're here. Guys, where can we find you on the interweb?
Well, you can check us out. I mean, obviously, we're on YouTube, Cinefanatics. You can find us there. You can also get on Twitter. We're there at Cinefanatics MLP, as well as we each have our own Chris Adams MLP, and he's Robert Adams MLP.
Hell yeah. What is MLP?
It stands for Method Living Productions. That's kind of like my overall
cool.
everything.
I've always wanted to know that. I've just seen it and I've never asked. So, guys, you can find me at Andrew Ghai. This is Action Movie Anatomy. This show adheres to 4 basic rules. And I don't know if this one will match. We'll see. Rule number 1, the hero plays by their own rules. What do you think about that? Does Spider-Man play by his own rules, or does he play by the rules of everyone else?
I think the arc of Spider-Man is learning that his own rules work with other people's, and he hasn't found that out yet because he's still young.
He's still a baby.
I think this Spider-Man does not play by his own rules, but we're seeing the foundation of his own rules being formed.
He's 16.
He's a literal child.
He's a child. Rule number 2, the hero and the villain are always the smartest peoples, beings, creatures, animals, dinosaurs in the room. This I have to completely agree with.
It's spelled out for us.
It is, yes, it is. That is literally the premise of the movie, is that he is smarter than we believe that he is. Rule number 3, the movie is driven by a police, military, or political figure. We can consider the Avengers kind of as a military force, if we will. They do or used to work for the government. Right now, they're not really on the best terms.
Yeah, I'd say half of them.
Half of them, yeah. And rule number 4, the movie contains a minimum of 1 explosion. It's a Marvel movie. There's always explosions in Marvel movies. Guys, quick Patreon shout out to Kelsey Kirkland and Mac Ryan. You guys are amazing. Mac Ryan donated $100 in Super Chat the other day for our AMA 200 streams. So Mac is a legend. Kelsey is also a general, so I and we all salute you. You guys don't have to. It's Ben saluting you somewhere. I think he's on a plane right now. I don't know.
When isn't he on a plane?
The guy lives in the air.
It's impressive.
It's insane. I don't know how
does he stay so hydrated?
He doesn't.
Like, because his skin isn't like, you see people on a plane, they're like, Ben, good on you. Whatever your regimen is, keep it up.
You hear that, Ben? You hear that?
Impressed.
So, guys, a couple segments. We're going to talk about Coy's top 5 MCU villains, see if Mysterio works his way in there or not. We'll be doing the action, guys. I will be doing it later today with John Roca. We'll be discussing our top 10 MCU villains. I think we have the same first, but we'll have to see. AMA 200 just happened this last week. Thank you guys so much for participating in that. And lastly, down below in the description, there is a link to buy tickets to New York Live. The action guys are going to New York. You heard it here. Not first, but one of the very first times. This is the first time you'll actually be able to see the link. You can buy tickets down below. We are so excited. We're going to do like an hour-and-a-half show with you guys. So look at it. Click on it. Do it. Guys, let's hop right into the show, and let's start off with what we always start off with, our thesis statement. Coy, I would love to start with you, unless you want me to jump in first.
I think I got one.
Yeah, all right. What is your thesis statement, guys? This is your biggest, boldest thought about the film. If you were at a Far From Home party, this is what you would say.
The beauty of Far From Home is that it is an MCU villain that isn't a piece of history. It is a prophetic villain that reflects the future.
Whoa. Whoa.
That's how I saw this movie. It is a villain that is not playing with the mythology of the comics as a mandatory. It is playing with the pieces of the mythology at once.
Yeah.
But the character itself reflects the future, not the present day. We're only going to see more deep fakes. We're only going to see more fake government videos. We're only going to see more real videos that are pretending to be fakes. We're only going to see more terrifying uses and abuses of power with the digital medium.
Yeah.
This is a character who does that as a villain. So I believe this, much like Idiocracy, where that was the first prophetic president, is the first prophetic villain. With Terry Crews, we got to see what we'd be living in, not to get political, but with this character, we get to see what villainy will be in the future. And I think we're only going to see more fake videos, and the character itself reflects what I believe in less than 15 years our problems are going to be, perhaps even less than 10.
Well, dude, you've already seen those crazy ass videos
Deep
of
fakes
like
are scary as
being
hell.
able to take Obama's face and have him say things that he would never say.
Like the Joe Rogan voice, like
Yeah,
his podcast, he's in enough of they can get the sound bites and just have Joe Rogan say stuff on a machine.
Which is horrifying.
Yeah.
I love that thesis. I think it's brilliant. I think it's also terrifying looking into the future, and I don't think you're wrong by any means. I think you're completely correct, and it's going to start happening. It probably already has started happening.
We've already seen some of it, and I think on the scale of this is the 15-year mark. I think in the next 5 years, we'll start to see it as more of a reality where people are going to start to get worried. In the next 10, we're going to have a large ramification from it. In the next 15, I think it's going to be hard to discern reality from unreality. In my opinion, we're living in a time now where things are about to change enough. We're going to consider what we record as a different medium now.
Yeah.
The way we look at video as a be all end all versus CGI, like we're about to be in a tectonic shift where that changes, where reality and unreality, the uncanny valley is going to get crossed to a new threshold where we're going to have to relearn what we see as real.
Yeah, and there's going to have to be like people are going to have to walk around with like a trademark on their face or
You know,
something
like-
like pops out like an image to let you know like it's really me.
I think Edith glasses are going to become an actual, like, not mandatory, but something like that is going to have to translate things for us, because AR and VR are already prevalent, and the way technology is exponentially improving, it's going to be a point where we can't discern between the two, and we're going to have to say what's real and what's not. And I think we might not live through that, but our kids will.
Did you like Edith?
I liked the name a lot. I think Edith inherently has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a great tool that was used sometimes perfectly, but other times not. And I think that it ties in a lot of my faults with the film. I really love this film, and I want to go in with a very high positive, but the film isn't my favorite Spider-Man where it is a lot of people. So it's an A-. Like, good God.
Yeah.
But it's not the A+, and Edith was one of the things that brought it down for me a little.
I couldn't agree more. Guys, do you have a thesis? I know that it's not, you don't have to have one. I just figured I'd ask you.
There's no way I can follow up with
My rant about the
I'm
future.
about to do. You know, I was trying to give myself a little buffer. Think.
Let's see how this works now.
Exactly. So my thesis, it was originally going to be that this was the best acted and worst execution of a villain, because I love Gyllenhaal so much, but I do agree that the bar scene and the bar monologue, even though what he said was kind of cool, I didn't love his actual execution of it, even though I think Gyllenhaal is essentially perfect in everything that he does. But what I will say, and it popped to me right before the show started, was I think I've never been more terrified for Spider-Man in any film than I was in this one in Berlin.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, any of the other Spider-Mans, put them all together, even like Doc Ock, who's still one of my absolute favorites, Green Goblin, played by Dafoe, I think that those were great, but I never really worried for Spider-Man.
Right.
This one, I was just like, how the hell is this? How is he? Mysterio has to let him go, essentially, for him to get out of this.
He's lost already.
He's done.
It's someone else has to get him out.
Exactly. And who could get him out?
It's in my
other
top
than
10
Mysterio?
sequences of all the MCU. All 23 films, that makes my top 10 sequences by a comfy margin.
And then when he actually goes into the illusion, it's super badass. You see all the drones, but that first time it happens to him, I was just like, there's no way he can possibly. I was like looking around, like at the 15 and 13-year-old sitting next to me. I sat in between two gigantic families all by myself on a Sunday, and I was like, you guys seeing this shit? How's he gonna get out of here?
Dude, I saw it in a crowd of 6 people. So I saw it in a tiny.
Tell us about your viewing experience. This is insane.
So I'm sure saying how I saw it doesn't break an NDA, but I saw it in London before we did the comic book shopping. So obviously we did an episode with Jake, so I had to have seen the movie. And I saw it early. So I'm in a screening of only like 6 other individuals. So I'm one of 6, and it was the only time I've seen a movie at that small of a crowd where the gasp at the post-credit scene was all 6 of 6. Like, it was a universal, like, and I looked around like, oh, you guys felt that too. Yeah. But the beautiful thing about that sequence was, even with that few amount of people and in that small of a screening room, the tension was palpable for that entire sequence. And it wasn't in a theater, it was in a screening room. But even in that, like, everyone was like palm sweaty. Right. Everyone was freaking out. So I love that it usually takes that 200-person ramification, but it was 6 of us all like, we're glitching in the Matrix, all of us together. It was surreal. It was incredible.
Do you know if anyone in that room had actually seen the sequence?
I mean, I assume at least one person had. I won't say who.
I'm curious to see if even he had seen it. So anyway, that is, because that's a lot of post-production.
It was incredible.
It was absolutely like jaw-dropping. So guys, those are our thesis statements, unless you guys want to hop in with one. Totally cool if you don't. All right, cool. No, I'm just joking. I love messing with people on the couch. So, guys, those are our thesis statements. I got a couple comments here. People are saying they actually really love Gyllenhaal in the bar scene being douchey. They think it show what kind of villain he is. It's not that I don't like the way he portrays being a douche. I think you have to. I think Quentin has to be that way. It's just, I think the delivery from Gyllenhaal was probably maybe not the best take. Maybe there was things left on the editing room floor, even though they're on computers now. But you know what I mean? Where maybe he might have had a better line delivery in some of them.
So I liked the bar room. Once he was monologuing, the bar bothered me in the Peter sequence because Peter didn't know that it was a simulation. Why is he with his mask off?
I know.
Like I was like, bro. Like it doesn't matter if you're Night Monkey or Spider-Man. You're still a fucking superhero.
The amount of times that he was just chilling without his mask on,
I had anxiety.
Incredibly uncomfortable. Like even in the beginning with Aunt May and like the whole Spider-Man.
When those curtains open, I was like, bro.
Yeah, I was like, and then he just walks out with. I was like, oh, is this a thing they're doing? He's gonna walk out there and forget to put on his mask. But there's like 2 layers of curtains. It's like this is a high school.
Yeah. What is this double blind?
Yeah, that was one of the things that bothered me the most. But you gotta let it go. You gotta move on. Yeah, I remember that specifically really bothering me, and then the whole Night Monkey thing. It was just like, it is. If you couldn't figure out that Spider-Man, you deserve to be Mysterio.
Yeah,
like, I don't know who you are out there that didn't think that Night Monkey was Spider-Man. Oh well.
Whatever. What I would have done with the Night Monkey character is use some tech back in the States and have Night Monkey appear somewhere, like have Nick Fury plant Night Monkey, and that way there is a second character seen somewhere else.
Or like have Spider-Man being in the States at the same time. Like do something to allude to anyway.
Because Prowler's been Spider-Man in the comics canon, so have Donald Glover put on the Spidey suit. Give me something. Give me something.
Yeah.
It felt like, okay, I get it over here. Like, come on.
Yeah. So, fist pump, guys. This is one of the best parts of the show. One of my favorite parts of the show. It's a moment in the movie where you look around, you're like, oh my god, are you guys seeing this? This is actually happening. I gotta watch the rest of this movie right now. Holy crap! And for me, I think I gotta hop in and say it was, and I just mentioned it, but I loved when he jumped into the illusion. When you actually got to see the amount of drones and what they were doing, because when they were setting it up in the green screen room, like him and his team, Quentin Mysterio's team, I was like, okay, he wants to turn up the power here so that it blows up the rocks more. I was like, this is kind of lame. Like, it's like, this looks like a movie set. This is what this is. It makes sense. I was like, but how is this actually going to be executed? Like, this just doesn't, it for some reason it didn't click with me.
Okay.
But when they actually jumped into the illusion, you saw what was going on. You saw the way the drones were doing it. You saw them underwater hitting, like, that. I was like, damn, okay. All right, you got me. You won me over, Marvel. You've done it again, MCU. But I just loved it because it actually took something that I thought was too big, too grand, and not actually going to be able to be visualized or executed correctly, and it actually worked perfectly for me. That was my moment.
I would normally say fist pump moment would be the entire sequence of Mysterio, but that's not really fist pump because you're more like oppressed.
Yeah, you're like
the whole time you're like, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
So like it's the opposite of a fist pump in a positive way, because that sequence I'm gonna wear out my Blu-ray just playing that over again.
Yeah.
So just a nod to that sequence. But fist bump wise, I love that Spider-Man is always down in his luck, beaten down, and has to rise up. Mm-hmm. And in Homecoming, there is a beautiful reflection of Amazing Spider-Man 33 where he lifts the thing above his head and they do the mask.
Right.
Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And I was like, how are they going to have that moment in this movie where he's always got his mask off? But they do this beautiful sequence where they don't mirror a Spider-Man nod. They mirror a cap-wielding Mjolnir nod when he picks up the London Bridge, and he's also got the frickin' power source. Yeah. And then he like stands up and then he goes charging in after he's had his butt kicked. That to me was my fist bump of like, Spider-Man never says die. Like he's a Goonie. Like Spider-Man will never be put down for long. And I love that he was like, all bets were against him and he still rallied. And that to me is Spider-Man.
I was gonna ask about that because specifically I saw that and I was like, this has to be taken from something, but I didn't know if it was Spider-Man. I didn't know if it was Cap. I wasn't sure where it originated.
So there's actually a Miles Morales cover. I think it's Miles Morales Spider-Man #2, where he's holding the shield like Spider-Man did in Homecoming, and they've also often had Spider-Man wielding things that have that reflection, but most notably Miles in that cover. So I think it was a reflection of just that general like power set, like go forward. And to me, it reminded me of the glory of Mjolnir and the shield in Endgame. So I was just like, oh, Spider-Man's doing the thing.
It's hard for me to not just have that as my favorite moment in the whole entire Marvel universe.
It's the only time I've happy cried every viewing. Like I've happy cried first viewings before, but I can't not watch that and just like quietly weep.
Yeah, we saw Endgame on the Disney lot.
Yeah,
with, there was like that whole like trains of people going in and out all day long of the people that were actually seeing it.
People waiting outside. Yeah, in the line as we left, and everybody's talking about the movie. I'm like,
I know.
Like,
right there. A guy was walking by and he said something, and I was there with my girlfriend. I was like, I'm gonna fucking kill that guy. If he does this right now, we're gonna jump him. And you're coming with me, baby. We're gonna jump. up. I know you don't know what's going on.
It's worth it.
But yeah, it would have been worth it. But that scene, I remember the entire room exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you not? I even screamed, and I'm not usually a person that like yells in movies, but I was like, yeah!
That's the fist pump of the decade.
Yeah.
Like I'd give that the universal fist pump. Like if you're watching the show, you're a fan of these movies, that's the bar.
That is the bar. Guys, do you have a fist pump moment? What was the moment in the movie where you kind of just lost your mind?
Say other than what you've already mentioned, because that was probably like the Mysterio scene with the illusions, then going into the illusion and seeing, because no other visual medium that we've had Mysterio in so far, the animated cartoons, video games, they've pretty much just given us the illusions without showing like exactly how it was done. And this was the first time they actually like, we need to see how Mysterio is capable of doing it. Other aside of the fact that Mysterio, Quentin Beck, is typically a special effects expert from Hollywood. In this one, he was more of just a disgruntled Stark employee. So going in and showing how he is able to still do all these illusions just like he was a special effects expert, like he was in the comics and cartoon and video games and everything. That was nice. I think another thing I guess we haven't touched upon yet, and it's, I guess kind of against the action part of it, was the relationship that was built up between Peter and MJ.
Dude, yeah, I could not. My other fist pump was when she kissed him.
Oh, and I love that it was awkward at first.
Yes.
Because it was so real, that like half kiss,
awkward.
and then they got a real
awkward.
kiss.
It was great.
Beautiful.
I know, and the other thing was, again, I was sitting in between two gigantic families of children, and like every time that they would have a moment, the kids would be like, "Ah, gross," and I was like, "Yes,
Adorable.
This is perfect. Like this is the perfect way to put it in context."
You know Hector Navarro, right?
Yeah.
Did you see his beautiful Twitter thread about MJ?
No.
Internet. Twitter, Hector Navarro, he pointed out, I noticed it, but not as layered and beautifully as Hector. MJ in this film does what she did in the comics by slowly being revealed. So in the comics, MJ has 7 cameos that you don't see her face before in issue 42, and she's fully MJ.
Okay.
So it's a slow build. We meet Aunt Anna's niece by way of like, I'm going to set you up on a blind date, and you never see her face. And then it's her reveal. There's this moment, John Romita drew her finally fully formed. So John Romita got to basically introduce MJ, who'd already been met. And I love that the movies basically did that by having Michelle Jones be MJ,
right.
But then in this movie be the one who finds out Spider-Man by her own smarts, just like she does in the comics, the one who's always like right there in the edges. They slowly formed MJ, so through a different narrative, through a different medium, through film, they were able to do a slow burn reveal like the comics did in a new way.
Well, even at the end of Homecoming, when she's like, "You can just call me MJ" or whatever her line is, I was like, "Ah,
yeah,
yeah!"
And they did it again in this one
Yes,
by having her discover a secret identity with her own smart. I loved
it. I did too, and the way that she does, I loved her walking around with the mall.
Yes.
at the end, that's what it's called, right? Mall. What are those things called? The
like
spike thing?
Maul. No, that's Darth Maul. What is it? A mace.
A mace. There we go.
I was all with you. I was like, Maul?
I am right. I'm wrong. All right, so we got to keep moving through the show. And one thing, actually, I really want to talk about it because we're going to get into star profiles right now. We'll really quickly just go through Tom Holland, Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, and the current war. It was released at TIFF in September 2017, but was delayed until the 10/4/2019 due to the Weinstein allegations. Yeah. No fun. Fun.
Excited to see it.
Yeah, me too. That being said, on the other side of it, you have Jake Gyllenhaal, who has done Velvet Buzzsaw, The Sisters Brothers, which I did just watch, and Wildlife. I actually like The Sisters Brothers. It wasn't like my favorite film, but I thought it was entertaining enough. Have any of you guys seen Velvet Buzzsaw?
It's real weird. I was at the premiere.
Obsessed with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, dude, it was actually, there were moments during our interview where I was like, I've mentioned too many of your films in a row.
Lean back.
I definitely know
Pull
too
back,
much.
Coy, pull
Here's your
back.
IMDb in chronological order, Jake. But there was a moment we were talking about Velvet Buzzsaw, and I went to the premiere, so I saw it with an audience. But it's a Netflix film, so everybody was like didn't enjoy it. But since I saw it with 200 people, all the laughs landed for me.
Okay.
So I watched it, loved it, and was raving about it. Then I watched it at home, and I was like, oh, so it's truly a theatrical movie that never got a theatrical push. Velvet Buzzsaw is a satire about art and how far it can go into the psyche,
right.
and it's almost like the problem is it's a glorified Goosebumps episode at points.
I was gonna say, because isn't it supposed to be scary?
It's scary, but it's like satire scary.
Okay.
So there's actually a moment in comic book shopping where Jake and I talk about the Velvet Buzzsaw, and his reaction is also like, I don't know what that was.
Really?
Like it's kind of this universal, like it's an experiment, and it landed for some and not for others.
Okay.
So I enjoyed it, but it's definitely like it's an attempt at something, whether that lands for you or not.
Check it out.
Jake's filmography is one of the best. Period.
Oh,
the
and
choices he makes, the leaps he does.
I forgot to plug it earlier because I've just been so hyped. We have the Spoke.co. It's this new app. I don't know if Ben's talked to you about this
No.
yet. Dude, it's insane. So what it is, it's a movie review app, and you can look up any film, and it'll show you exactly where it's streaming, what the reviews are of Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, and also everyone that you're friends with. In the app, it shows what they've rated the film.
I like this.
So you can go and see what your friends think of movies, because honestly, at the end of the day, that's kind of who you trust more these days than critics,
Yeah.
because critics can hate movies you love or love movies you hate. And this is where you literally build your own group of critics amongst your friends, amongst people you respect, people in the community that you respect, like, all the influencers out there that do what we do.
Yeah.
That the idea is that the Spoke.co will have those people doing reviews, so you can be like, oh, well, I love Coy. I trust Coy. Let's go see what he thinks about these films.
And that's a lot of, especially the films that take chances, like Jake's films. Like
Yeah.
Southpaw, I loved and no one saw it. Like
Yeah.
Southpaw is incredible, and I wouldn't have seen that if I listened to the critics. And that's been important to find those films. And especially, did you see Demolition?
I actually have not seen that.
Demolition is this incredible, nuanced, very French art house film about a man who loses his wife and doesn't feel anything, and he's numb, and he's trying to find love and feeling about anything again.
And that's
so
him.
it's Jake, and it's the whole arc is just him trying to emote. So only an actor of that level can be like, I'm not emotional, and make it seem believable and work, and you'd
Right.
be interested, because people not emoting is a problem.
It's
like,
very difficult.
It's day-to-day life. You're not interested in the guy that's sitting next to you at a cubicle, but Jake is so interesting that he lands this. And I feel like the Mysterio role was this beautiful culmination of all of Jake's different choices as an actor, because the opening has to be charming, like OG Jake career.
I love the beginning.
How
that
he charming
is.
Quentin Beck,
and the whole time, if you know comics, because I've actually heard that it hits better for people that don't know the comics.
I can't imagine how cool that would be.
Yeah, right? Because the whole movie, I'm just sitting there waiting, like, all right, when is this going to happen? When's it going to happen?
And they kind of troll movie fans because they don't do it in the beginning of the second act. They
Right.
do it 20 minutes or 15 minutes later than you'd expect. So there are points where I, as a comic fan, was like, maybe this is the multiverse, and we're going to get like a bad Mysterio and a good Mysterio.
Yeah,
it was just long enough. I was
Yep.
like, they got me. And only Jake Gyllenhaal's IMDb reflects how much of a thing that is, because 90s Jake Gyllenhaal charm, early 2000s Jake Gyllenhaal mischief, late 2000s darkness with Nightcrawler and Prisoners.
Yeah.
He kind of plays all of those in this one role.
We've said many times on this show that we believe that Jake Gyllenhaal is probably the most underrated actor in Hollywood.
I would say absolutely.
I mean, even though he's still an A-list superstar, he just was a villain in a Marvel film, he is still underrated.
One nomination, no wins, Oscar, and he should be able to do whatever he wants. If he's not, I think he is, but if he's not, there should be no role that is. It's Jake.
He could have won for Brokeback. He should have been nominated for Nightcrawler. He could have been nominated for. He could have been nominated for almost anything he's done in the last 10 years.
Agreed.
He's just insane. So that being said, you mentioned Mysterio. Does Mysterio? I want to talk to you about your top 5 MCU villains.
Yes.
There's very few people in this world as versed as you are in film and in comics for this specific topic. So give it to me. We're going to go top 5. Let's count down, and I want to hear exactly why. And does Mysterio make your list?
So Mysterio would be between 6 and 10.
Okay.
So he makes the top 10, not the top 5.
Fair.
5, Hela.
Yes.
Hela's right there.
I love Hela, dude. She's so badass.
She's incredible. She's nuanced. She reflects the comic, and she also reflects the movies in a way. She reinterprets death. She also is the god of death, and they make those both work. And it's like, what a performance!
And she crushes his hammer with one hand.
She's awesome throughout that, and only with that kind of villain can that insanity of Ragnarok work. And finding that level, like that balance. Number 4, Vulture.
Yes.
I'm gonna go.
Love Vulture.
There's 2 sequences in Homecoming alone that I think are amongst the best of any villain performance. One of them is in the car,
Yes.
where he literally strong arms him by being a dad and a supervillain.
And he busts out a gun.
Just
There's
in a
something
car!
so tacky about it because it's Spider-Man and he knows, but there's just something so
menacing, dude.
Yes.
And
I
he's driving
love
a
it.
car from the comics, by the way. They
is he?
actually, there's a drawing of that Jaguar, green Jaguar from the comics that reflects in the movie. So the detail.
That's great.
So that whole sequence, and then later on when they do that across the room sequence where he literally gets overpowering Spider-Man in a wide shot,
Yeah.
and he's talking him down, and he's running that room, and then they do a Green Goblin metaphor with the wings coming in instead of the Goblin glider. Not only do they reflect Vulture, they also reflect the Green Goblin without having us get another Green Goblin. So
Yes.
for me, the Vulture did so much right, and doesn't get enough care.
And the reveal that he's the dad.
And they
was so good.
twist on the
man.
comics again, where that's not a narrative in the comic books.
not at all.
Adrian Toomes is not a
Oh,
father.
yeah, I think Ben told me that.
He's not a guy at all. We don't care about Adrian Toomes' lineage.
But now we did. We did.
And the collar on the God damn, the Vulture is so slept on.
Yeah,
I think the
he's
Vulture.
so great.
So that's my number 4. Number 3. Before there was Thanos, there was Loki.
Yeah.
Loki ran phase 1 and a lot of phase 2. People forget how before we had Thanos, how important Loki was. I love that Loki pops up and then turns into Cap in Thor: Dark World, and it makes Thor: Dark World better. I love the brother relationship. I love that you never trust him, but you want to because of how good Tom Hiddleston person is.
Right.
Like all of Ragnarok, you're like, this guy's gonna betray him, and you're like, but wait.
But what if he doesn't?
And I love that. Number 2,
I actually hated Loki for the longest
No
time.
shit.
I don't know why. I just was like not on board. I was like, there's got to be a better villain out there. But then I recently rewatched the Avengers, the original Avengers.
yeah.
I was like, damn, he's evil.
He's Shakespeare.
He just destroys people. His lines are beautiful. He's a true god in that movie. An evil god. So I'm totally with you with Loki there.
Number 2, the villain of our times,
This is what I'm so curious about.
Eric Killmonger.
Okay.
Eric Killmonger
Makes sense.
is what I loved about this movie, and again, like this touches on politics, and I apologize for people avoiding the real world while watching shows about escapism. He's an American. Like he has an American mindset, and he tries to take control using a lot of capitalistic and our worldview ideals, and he's doing things that are not just possible, they're happening.
Yeah.
He's a villain not doing like, I guess that could happen. Like, no, bro, go watch other like documentaries about these, like God of War with Nicolas Cage, another great action movie. And
Lord
Eric
of War.
Killmonger, thank you.
Yeah.
Lord of War and Eric Killmonger, same dudes.
Yeah.
Like that's the same world. So Killmonger, and the fact that he's just doing what he sees as right to such a level that we see it as right. And there are points where I'm like, I agree with him more than T'Challa. That I'm like, wait a second. And then T'Challa ends up doing what he set out to do at the end.
Right,
At the
which
end, he
is
does what Killmonger
to
wanted
go
to
and help
expand the
the
world.
world.
So
Yeah.
the villain won by dying in a way, which is beautiful. And number 1, come on.
How could it not be?
Big Daddy Thanos.
It's Big Daddy Thanos.
Come on, with 3 C's, so thick. I love Thanos' ability to play a 10-year game and not be disappointing.
And like you understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Which I think is brilliant. And you also have to have that thing that all of these villains have, other than Loki probably in the first film. But the rest of them are just trying to do what they think is right.
Yeah.
That and by any means necessary.
And the only reason Loki's not trying to do what's right is he doesn't care what's right.
Exactly.
And that makes him more fun because he's a chaotic neutral.
Yes.
He's not chaotic good or bad, he's just chaos. Him and the Joker are fun because there is no through line. The beauty of these characters is there isn't a center. So Thanos for me is the most just of any of them because he's actually trying to rebuild worlds with resources.
Yeah.
And if you've been on the 405 during rush hour, he's right a lot of the time. Like there's many days where I'm like, please. Anytime now. And like they made him more of a villain in Endgame, but he's very, very reasonable in Infinity War. Like he definitely they had to make him more of a villain in Endgame, so when he dies, you kind of feel bad because in Infinity War you're like, man. Right. Oh no. And if you're reading any of the comics, the Thanos comic right now, the way he raises Gamora, you're like, dude's making all these choices, but I guess I kind of get it. Right. So Thanos is an incredible villain on page and on screen. Those are my top 5. All of them are top notch. I'd say Mysterio's in the 6 to 10 range because of it being so prophetic. Yeah. But these guys all had more time to play.
Do you think they did Mysterio justice in the way that he is portrayed? Because I also know, like, in the comics, he's supposed to be like an excellent hand-to-hand fighter. Like, he's supposed to be like a person that can actually go toe-to-toe with the superhero.
Well, the thing about Mysterio in the comics is you never know what you're dealing with, and you're not usually dealing with a physical manifestation of anything. Right. Like, you find out he's like a Doombot. Like, later on, you find out you were fighting, like, this entity that wasn't. He's been in the room the other time.
Right.
So, the thing about Mysterio is I don't think we've seen Mysterio fully Mysterio yet. I think we're gonna get like Sinister Six. I think we're gonna get more, and I think it's only gonna grow as a character. And I also think that Mysterio here, that one sequence is very perfectly Mysterio. And I think the Berlin sequence,
gotcha.
Berlin sequence and the end. Yeah. But I think that they had to tell a narrative that both summarized Endgame, set up Spider-Man for the future, and they did what they could with Mysterio. But I don't think this is the last we've seen of him.
Okay, so you believe he's still alive?
I believe the concept of Mysterio will always be alive.
What about? Okay, Jesus. No.
No, but like 20 people owned that version of him.
Yeah.
And I also think the physical body of Quentin Beck. Okay, if you look at the movie, Edith is worn by Quentin Beck and then handed to Peter. At no point did that transference of power go to play.
I know. I wondered that.
The only person that said that the only person that said that Quentin was gone was Spider-Man with his own eyes and Edith through Quentin's eyes.
Yeah.
Quentin Beck's not dead, and Mysterio's not dead.
Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
I think my thought with the glasses though was that ultimately Tony Stark allowed the glasses it could always go back to Peter Parker for him wearing the glasses.
Okay,
I thought that as well.
He can be selective on who he wants to transfer it to, but ultimately, if the glasses always find themselves back on Peter's face, they're going to work.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. But I also, because was like, maybe this is another oversight, like the mask thing. But do you believe that Mysterio or Quentin Beck himself is alive or dead, or do you believe he's going to be carried on through this group of people?
I'm going with I hope so, because I love Mysterio.
Yeah.
I love what they did with him and how they translated him to the screen. So like that. I need more of that sequence. I need more of those
Same.
moments.
And it feels like it would be just so amateur for him to have not expected Spider-Man to figure out the one thing, right? Like, you've always got to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, you know? Like, and Quentin Beck's the exact type of person that would do that.
And he asked for that cape twice, man. Like, that woman is still working on his physical suit, and I feel like that's going to come into play later.
Janice! Yes, I still need a cape.
I might be literally shaking hands with the Queen later.
That is such a great line. Okay, so I'm trying to think of what else I want to talk about. Okay, let's talk about the second post-credit scene. Because I'm an idiot. I didn't stay.
Did you leave?
I just wanted to get away from those damn kids, dude. Honestly, they were so great to watch the movie with, but this one
You've been
kid,
so positive the whole
would
time, and now the
not-
truth comes out.
He would not give up on his Slurpee. Ever. He rode that thing for the entire movie, and he finished it in the trailers. It was I literally at one point wanted to just be like, it's gone, bro. It's gone.
That's it.
I'll get you.
Do you need a refill?
Are these
These
Ediths?
are Edith Jason.
I
These are
love
but the Mysterio purple. I come branded, man.
This is wonderful.
Action movie Mysterio. I'm ready for shows.
So good. So what the hell happened? Talk me through it. Tell me what happened for anyone else that was as dumb as I was that didn't stay.
Sword is a thing in the comic books. Shield is a defensive, slightly more behind the scenes approach to weapons and surveillance and all those things. I thought they were going Sword and Winter Soldier because they were like, yo, we're going to kill everybody we got a problem with.
Right.
And then obviously Cap handled that. Winter Soldier set up so much. I feel like Sword in space is basically, that's a more offensive version of Shield. It is a more galactic version, and now that we have the X-Men and Fantastic Four rights back, it makes sense they expand to galactic stuff. In the comics, a character that's been owned by Fox has been running Sword. And I really think that we're going to get a lot more cosmic, obviously, with Phase 4. So to set up Sword with that post-credit scene, to have Nick Fury working with the Skrulls, and obviously that moment in the film where they're talking about the Kree casually, which was a beautiful reveal later when we found out they were Skrulls the whole time talking about the Kree.
Right.
Having Nick Fury off Earth also gave us some credibility of the most paranoid person on the planet would have seen through Mysterio's stuff. So that was really bothering me throughout the film.
Same.
Maria was
crazy.
acting super stiff,
Yeah.
and Robin Sparkles is a fantastic actress. I love Kobe Smulders.
I know. Kobe Smulders is. I don't know what it is with her and that specific character. They just don't work for me.
And
it needs to be
it's
someone else or a different character.
I think that she needs to be able to have more scenes so we fall in love with her. So when she's stiff, we've earned it.
Yeah.
I think we need more Maria Hill so we understand why she's that way.
Yeah.
The problem is if you're playing a character one direction where you're not invested, then you just see that.
Yeah, you're just kind of shut off from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get that. But I think that reveal at the end and then the post-credit scene in space, I think that's going to go right into where we go with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I think it's going to go right into Eternals. Honestly, I think that was more of an Eternal setup than anything. The Eternals obviously being this giant cosmic space opera that spans thousands of years. We need to set the precedent. We're going to be in space a lot.
Okay.
I personally hope that Marvel goes super cosmic and super grounded going forward. I'd like Spider-Man to I love that he traveled and I love that it still felt friendly neighborhood, but I want Spidey to be a ground game guy and then keep everything else cosmic. And I want some heroes still on Earth that are dealing with earthly stuff, especially since we lost Netflix. One of the best things the MCU did was keep a Netflix contingent of grounded earthly characters.
That's a good point.
And those are gone now. So we need someone to be the guy that we see underdog with.
He needs to be the new Iron Man.
And
He
we-
needs to just hang out.
I
on
think he
Earth.
needs to be smaller than Iron Man.
Yeah,
Because
that's fair.
Iron Man can still, like, he flew to space with a nuke. We
Right.
need Spider-Man to be the guy with the churros and the bikes.
You think
and
he
the,
just stays right there?
I think we need to grow with Spider-Man and see that there are still characters we can see eye to eye with. If everyone's Thor, then Thor doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, that's the problem we have with these movies getting too big, is if we don't relate to any of them, then our relatable characters are just as big as our unrelatable, and then there's no way to, like, feel like you're part of the team. Spider-Man's our guy. He's
Yeah.
who we identify with. So I think he should be small in Phase 4. Like, stay grounded anyway. Not small, but grounded.
And do you think there's ever actually gonna be a good Fantastic Four movie?
Yes.
I want it so bad. I've wanted it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, because that was one of the. I remember watching the cartoon all the time. I absolutely loved it, and the fact that, like, I don't know.
I think
Every single
that-
one's been atrocious, and the cast of the last one was so good.
Yeah, but a director made that movie, and then a studio made that movie, and
know,
then they put it
I
out,
know.
and it was 2 movies.
was
Like,
so bad.
there was literally a 1 year later mark where the movie changed movies, and you're like, what's happening?
Oh,
Like,
I haven't even seen it.
it,
I watched like
Don't.
the first 20 minutes, and I was like, I just don't care.
those are the best 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. It
And I
only
still didn't
spiral. But I think Fantastic Four as an entity is such a good concept that with the right hands behind it, which it's never had, it'll be something special.
And now it does feel like it's in the right place. So let's just talk money real quick. We're gonna skip over production development because we got all those great behind the scenes tidbits from you. Big shout out to Brandon Hanna for doing all the production development notes that we're gonna skip right now. So Brandon, Thank you so much. It was directed by John Watts. We'll just say that. He's known for directing Clown in 2014, Cop Car in 2015, and of course Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017. You guys know who produced this film. That's no surprise there. So Marvel Studios, Sony, Columbia. The budget was not pulled up, so I can look that up. But as of right now, as of yesterday, it grossed $185 million domestic, an additional $395 million foreign, and a total of $580 million. So just over $500 million in its first week. It was number one at 93.6 million. It's got an 8.1 on IMDb, a 91% on the tomato meter, and a 96 by the audience, which I think that's good. I think that's fair. Guys, what is your favorite line?
It's weird because it's a stutter.
Is it?
My favorite line in the film is when Peter goes, something, Beck, and then Jake Gyllenhaal goes, it's Mysterio. That bit summarized the entire character, gave us the charm of Jake and Quentin Beck while also like playing up the fact that he's a showman.
Yeah.
If you look at that line, it's actually a huge reveal.
Well, it is.
He's leaning into the fact that he's like becoming an entity, and he didn't have a character name. Like at that moment for me, it's like a couple words, but Mysterio.
Yeah, and he's also, it's, you know, everything he does is like a little nod to Peter, like, hey, thanks, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like, early on, he's like, hey, thanks for doing that. Thanks for giving me that cool name. Remember what you wanted to call me? Like, all that stuff. And that's why I think maybe if you never knew or you knew nothing about Mysterio, watching it the first time was probably a better experience than we got because of the turn. But then now you get to go watch it the second time knowing that and see all the things that you missed. So this is one of those moments where it would be probably great to not have any of the history like known involved. Or like,
so jealous of those people. And you get to see it again with the post-credit scene knowing the reveal.
Yeah.
So your second viewing will be special.
Halfway there.
And it's going to have legs because of that. I think it's going to make a lot of money for second, like repeat viewings because of the kind of movie it is.
Yeah, I think so. And there's definitely things I want to just go back and watch again, especially like that scene in Berlin. I just want to watch everything because I was so overwhelmed by it. And half the time I was just thinking, how the hell is he going to get out of this? I didn't really get to even enjoy it. So do you guys have a favorite line? Mine is Peter Tingle. I love the Peter Tingle. It cracks me up the amount of times it was said, and then when he finally gets it back, because when he does finally get his spidey senses back and he's fighting with his eyes closed, I was just like, in the illusion, I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what I want out of Spider-Man right now. So it was like almost a fist pump, but the Peter Tingle from everyone, from Happy, from himself, from Aunt May, wonderful. Do you guys have a line or not?
I mean, for me, like, it's not so much a line. It's kind of a twist on that a little bit. It's just the moment where, like, Mysterio Quentin Beck is there, and he's got his crew all around, and they're in that warehouse or what have you, and he's sitting there, like, putting things together like it's a production.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a great callback to bring in, like, he is that special effects artist from the comics.
From Hollywood,
yeah.
But instead, we're seeing him, you know, with his team and trying to pull the strings and pull everything together. That was just awesome.
And you knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to give you all the exposition, and it was so like in your face the way they did it. But I actually really liked how they did it because I needed to know.
The fact that he was in a mocap suit, that's a legit mocap suit I've worn. Like that's a mocap suit.
A real
like
mocap
that's what
suit,
you look like in those suits. That moment really made me happy because I was like, oh right, this is what Mysterio would really wear, and it made the fishbowl cannon logical because you'd have to put CGI over a shape that would work for the AR helmet. So his CGI representation would need something, and I was like, Jesus Christ, that's perfect.
It was brilliant.
Love that.
Yeah. So Grayson Rodriguez asked, we have on Instagram every single week we do a competition on the weekends, and whoever wins that, it's usually an AMA related question. You can send a message to us and we pick from the right answers, and someone gets to ask the AMA question. So this week Grayson Rodriguez asks, I love Tom Holland. I think this version is a lot of fun, but do you think it's lacking in the Uncle Ben department? Guilt and responsibility is a core aspect of the character, but it seems to be missing, and I personally have a hard time connecting with it. As always, love the show. Love you, Grayson. Thanks for the great question. I think you should probably take the lead on this. I mean, I don't mind it not being there because it's the same thing where it's like I don't need to see Bruce Wayne's parents die every time that there's a Batman movie. Sure. I really don't, and I know the Uncle Ben story. I've seen it many times. I liked it in The Amazing Spider-Man. I liked it in the originals. But I don't disagree that the guilt and responsibility is a big thing that weighs heavy on Spider-Man's character in those first two franchises. So I don't miss it, but I don't think I would have hated to see it.
I feel like Uncle Ben is now Uncle Tony, and I definitely think the guilt and responsibility of losing Tony is going to be what they reflect. They even had a tombstone. Like there's a Tony Stark tombstone of his guilt in the movie. So to me, Iron Man. Yeah. And also that Marvel Zombies nod. Marvel Zombies, great run. What I liked about Iron Man... Yeah, it's Iron Man. Like, he's effectively got Iron Man as an uncle, and they still get to play with that trope at MCU it. So I miss Uncle Ben because of the power and responsibility and all those concepts. But the thing that actually bothers me more isn't that. It's about we can't ever have the Daily Bugle responsibility of Spider-Man's always kind of torn about the fact that he's selling pictures of himself.
Right.
And he's always kind of like, I have to do this for money. I have to do these things. And for me, I interpreted that as he's about responsibility and he's kind of hoodwinking people. So the moment where he takes a selfie when he's swinging around at the end, I was like, this is it. This is when it begins. Now he sees he can sell these photos, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
To me, that was a nod towards, and then they immediately took it away.
Yep.
So the power and responsibility of Uncle Ben also reflects his business choices and what he does for a career and all those things. So for me, I have to start seeing the MCU Spider-Man as completely separate from the comics. Because the choices they made in this film completely separate who Spider-Man is from the comics. He can't work at the Bugle. He can't go back to high school. He can't publicly be like running around as the underdog.
Why can't he go back to high school?
Because Peter Parker's Spider-Man.
Oh, right, because everyone knows now. Yeah, Jesus.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
how does he go to college?
what happened?
Like,
Yeah.
how does he? Like, he's about to be a senior. Nope. Like, there's
the ending of this movie was so crazy,
It's
and that's
huge.
also why I think Mysterio's still alive.
Yeah.
Is because he was still able to orchestrate. If he had the wherewithal to orchestrate all that in the last seconds he was dying, then he's definitely still alive. There's just no way.
there's got to be some seeds planted.
How is he going to exist as a he's 16? This isn't like when
That's what I
Bruce
mean.
Wayne disappears for a while in at the end of or in Rises. It's much different.
I do like that this movie did have the Ben Parker in the suitcase, so we still got to know that Ben Parker exists in the universe. His suitcase had BFP on it, and Ben Parker. There's a running joke in the comics that he's based off Ben Franklin, so Benjamin Franklin Parker.
Okay.
So I like that we got that. Like, so he's canon, but I do think we're missing out on some key. This is why Spider-Man operates the way he does moments in general. I don't think Tony Stark should be his only father figure, and I think that in the comics, Tony and him are they're closer in age one, but they're much more like kin spirits.
Well, and it feels like we're way too far past ever bringing Uncle Ben in.
Yeah.
Like someone like seeing the suitcase like you and knowing that those are his initials is much different than actually now throwing in a flashback of when Uncle Ben left. Like that would suck.
And it'd be weird. And who's gonna play him? Like, you'd also like the Marissa Tomei age makes it very like Tobey Maguire's the funny joke, but like having Toby be Uncle Ben would be the fun answer. But it'd be tricky to add a movie 6. We've had 5 Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland now. It'd be really weird to put him in 6.
God, that's so crazy.
Isn't that
We've done
insane?
so many already.
And it's like every year we get 1 or 2, and then we've
Yeah.
also had the game and stuff. So we're very inundated with Spider-Man, especially with Spider-Verse, the game, and the 5 movies, and none of them have had Uncle Ben.
Yeah, that's
So
very true.
it's a very interesting time because I'm a huge fan of what Uncle Ben represents.
Same. I
So
think
it's
he's
really
great.
tricky to put him in now. So I just don't want kids that are growing up on this Spider-Man to not know how important that character is.
Right. How do you guys feel about not having Uncle Ben?
It kind of makes sense because I mean at this point we've also been like inundated left and right with say like Superman's origin. We all know this. This is kind of like just common sense at this point that you know a couple of these heroes. You know how Batman became Batman. You know how Superman becomes Superman. You know how Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man.
Right.
Especially because of the movies. I think the previous movies, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man movies, they're still pretty relevant and they still also heavily still dive into Uncle Ben. So it's still out there where people are aware of who Uncle Ben is. They get why this is something that eats at Peter Parker on a constant basis. And so with that being out there, there wasn't much need, I would say, for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to touch upon it, except like what you were saying, the little nods with the initials on there.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, I think, is good enough. But I agree, I would like maybe some kind of more of a mention. Like, we haven't even gotten anything as close to, like, maybe a picture on the wall or something. You would think even, like, at Aunt May's house that May Parker would have a picture of her deceased husband somewhere. We haven't even seen that.
I want a flashback with the kid that played Peter Parker in Iron Man 2, which they've retroactively made canon. That little kid at the Stark Expo, they said is Peter Parker. Whoever played that kid, I want him stunt casted. I want a flashback with Uncle Ben at a Mets game. And I just want a nod to the fact that he even existed. And then I don't even need the speech. I just want to know he's part of the universe.
hanging out.
Just hanging out. And that'll show some levity of Spider-Man's life before he was a world traveling, you've been to space bitch. Like, I want to see like a Queens boy again. We had no Queens in this movie. I want some Queens.
Yeah, that's very true.
Maybe he's watching like a video, like a flashback video or something of him and Uncle Ben doing something. Because we're in the modern age now, so it's very possible there could be a video somewhere of him at a baseball game with Uncle Ben. And Uncle Ben's just quickly saying that with great power comes great responsibility. And then we move on. Like a nice little nod to appease everyone. And then it just moves moves on. To,
There's a Untold Tales of Spider-Man number -1. It's a flashback issue, so it's a -1. Is just them at a Mets game, and
Really?
it's beautiful.
That's
and
it?
it's
Wow.
like he's like 7, and it's this great just character building, and that's what I think the movie could use is like some character building on Peter Parker, because
Yeah.
we've seen Peter Parker as part of the Avengers more than we've seen Peter Parker.
Yeah,
and I'd
completely.
like to have some Tom Holland. Like he's such a great actor. I want to see just some work.
I loved him and Zendaya so much in this and their
Oh, yeah.
relationship. That was some of my. The movie needed that, or else it would have fallen completely flat. You could have just had a bunch of superhero BS for 2 hours or
Agreed.
whatever. You needed that. So, moving on, guys. There are 3 action movie categories: totally ridiculous, totally legitimate, and ridiculously legitimate. They kind of explain themselves. I'm gonna have to say that this film is in the middle category, ridiculously legitimate. Not because it falls apart at any moment. I just think that there's a part of this film and a part of the way that Mysterio works that you kind of have to buy into the world a little bit. You
Sure.
have to believe that there's millions of drones flying around that aren't interacting with anything, and the fact that, you know, the Edith glasses and the way that it transfers ownership. There's just a few things, and mainly for me, it's the mask being off in many, many moments that it feels like you just wouldn't do as a superhero.
Yeah,
That's why I think it falls to the middle category.
I buy the Mysterio stuff more than the mask off, which is funny.
Yeah,
because
I
of the
do
world
too.
we live in. Like
Yeah.
people are complaining about that scene where Mysterio flies and lands next to Peter and they're talking. He's like, he couldn't actually fly because of the drones. In
Yeah.
my opinion, it's Quentin Beck sitting next to Peter and he's masking where he is, and then he manifests the fly. He holographs the flying up, and then he makes himself apparent.
Okay.
Like there are tricks you could do to make those things work.
Right.
But the mask off, what is that?
Right, especially in the world we live in. You're Mysterio. You just saved this country that you're in. These people are all going to be taking pictures of you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what fucking bar you're in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what hole in the wall it is.
Peter Parker
Everyone has
is everyone.
phones. Yeah. So everyone. Yeah. So I'm glad that you agree. Do you guys have a category you think it falls into?
I think I'd agree with.
Yeah, just because, I mean, you do have to suspend the belief of the fact that it's a superhero movie, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
But I mean, given the parameters, the laws of like how these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies have been working within, yeah, I mean, some of it is kind of weird, and I agree that now we are at the point where what Mysterio does is fairly believable, while there's kind of like, how is Spider-Man able to do this stuff? And going back to like his mask off, Spider-Man was one of the most secretive heroes, like for a
Right.
while there. Even if he was with, like, I think his first time that he was around the Avengers in the comics, he still wore the mask. None of the Avengers knew who he was.
Yeah, he was the only one without, like, he actually needed the money the most, but he wouldn't accept paychecks because they couldn't rent it out to Spider-Man. That's
so
Spider-Man.
funny.
Spider-Man at his core needs the money, but he won't reveal his identity, so the Avengers can't pay him. That's who the character is to me, and that's what's so tricky.
And
love it.
that was what was so important in the Civil War storyline, was like, it was, I think even one of the covers was him with his mask off, and that was a very key moment in Spider-Man's storyline, is him taking the mask off, like, my name's Peter Parker and I've been Spider-Man since I was 15.
Right.
In front of a camera and everyone.
And Jonah blacking out because he's worked with Peter. Now we
Yes.
can never have Peter and Jonah's relationship, which is like this other father and son relationship. So it's really tricky where we are. And I know we're cruising to the end, but 8B, Nicolas Cage is Uncle Ben.
Nicolas Cage.
With great power comes great responsibility, Peter. You got to remember that.
Marissa Tomei and him have done like 2-3 movies together. They
it'd
could
be
totally
great.
have a little nephew.
I love Marissa.
Tom Cruise as Iron Man and Nicolas Cage as, because Tom Cruise almost was.
I have a question for you.
What you got?
What do you think about a situation now that we have Peter's identity out there, where he lives in an age where he still needs to make that money from those photos, but he does it anonymously over the internet, since apparently the Bugle is now based on the internet and not so much a newspaper?
I could see that working for like the tiniest of, like, it could be like a side thing, like it could be a moment of mention, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
last for long. And also, how would he get the money? You know, like anonymously. It's the same problem as the Avengers.
Just Venmo it.
But
He's got offshore accounts.
you know what I think this sets up beautifully? Craven the Hunter.
Yes.
Who are you going to hire to hunt down this 16-year-old boy in New York that has all these powers?
Oh,
Yep.
that's
Craven,
interesting.
Craven's Last Hunt, doing that storyline.
I think Craven comes in, and I think that's how you bring it back to the grounded reality where he's a kid in New York.
I don't know who that is, but it sounds awesome.
Imagine an evil Steve Irwin.
Okay. I
in,
like
in,
it.
in a tiger vest.
Yeah,
Or lion,
Lion
vest.
Vest. Yeah.
Guys, there's one last thing to do on the show, and that's called the pitch. It's really weird when there's 3 people in here and no one does it. We never tell anyone.
Didn't
We're not
know it was
supposed to.
coming.
No,
Just
we never
right here.
do.
All right.
Okay. Guys, next week on the show, I'm actually going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. I'll be in China. I'll be in Xi'an doing the World Cyber Games, casting for Clash Royale. I'm very, very excited to do that. I will definitely miss the show, so I'm not sure what the movie's going to be next week. It's either going to be Pineapple Express or Stuber, depending on the guest and how good Stuber actually is, which I hope it's awesome. Have you seen it already?
I'm seeing it tonight.
You're seeing it tonight?
Yeah,
okay,
I'm excited.
All right, yeah, I'm very excited. I'll have to tweet you later and see what you think. And lastly, guys, a big general shout out: Andrew Hayes, Paul Denuzio, Billy Belford, John Getz, John Patterson, Jake Iacovetta, Kyle Grandinetti, Jonathan Peck, Kelsey Kirkland, and Matt Ryan. Damn, we got that many generals now, guys. Salute. Thank you so much for your support. Patreon.com/Team Action. If you want a little bit more information on that, click on the link down below. Buy tickets for New York Live. Cinefanatics, I cannot thank you enough for being here. I hope you have a great time at VidCon. Coy, it's always a pleasure, brother.
Dude, that was fun.
So much
Every
fun.
Spider-Man movie, we'll just make it a...
Yeah,
and if you ever
no,
do
we will.
Lethal Weapon, man, I'm telling you.
We will do Lethal Weapon.
Yes!
We'll at least do Lethal Weapon too.
30 years ago this week. Happy anniversary.
Boom. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.